And how do you know that I won't betray you?
Well, I guess I trust you.
Over the course of 4 seasons, has any other Succession character proven themselves to be more disloyal than Shiv Roy? Everyone has their moments, and the writers help us to understand why these characters feel so cornered in their respective situations, as we can see their options dwindling before our very eyes. But with Shiv, she's someone that always keeps her options open, whether it's in her romantic relationships, her business dealings, or her family bonds. A promise from Shiv Roy holds little to no value. And despite starting off the 4th season as a strong sibling unit, old habits die hard, and we see Shiv prioritizing her own personal interests over everyone else, yet again. But why? What has happened in her life that makes her so untrusting of others, and therefore so untrustworthy herself? Let's take a deeper look at the character of Shiv Roy over the course of Succession, to see if we can understand what makes her so predictably disloyal. It's important to remember that each sibling enters the family landscape with a different set of obstacles ahead of them. Connor never learned to compete and was just trying to survive, therefore paving the way for Kendall to feel like he was superior and bred to lead, as he was already prioritized over his older brother. Then Roman arrived and was put head to head against Kendall to see who would take over for their father. And then Shiv entered the race last, feeling like everyone else got a massive head start. Not to mention the added disadvantage of being a woman in a male-dominated household and industry.
A woman, that's a minus.
Well, of course it's a fucking minus. I didn't make the world.
From a young age, becoming aware of all the pieces on the board ahead of her, Shiv was going to have to be more cunning and strategic than everyone else if she was going to stand a chance of winning. She was never going to be able to compete if she was playing on the same field, as if she just worked in her dad's company, then she'd always be 2 steps behind her brothers, as they'll always have served a longer tenure. This creates a natural resentment in Shiv that, despite her intelligence, Logan is most likely going to hand the keys to Kendall as the eldest son in the game, despite his shortcomings and how capable she is of defeating him. This is why we consistently see Shiv be the one to block Kendall from taking over time and time again, whether it be at the start of the series when Logan is in hospital.
I mean, we could probably take any appointment to court.
Jesus, Shiv, we're talking about court now?
Or how bitter she feels when she suspects Logan has cut a deal with Kendall at the beginning of season 2.
You keep Kendall on to kill the bit and then he takes over when you step down in a year? A squalid little fucking backroom deal.
Or how needlessly dismissive she is of Logan's only named successor after his death.
You know, the underlining or the crossing out and the unknown age of the document isn't essentially moot. You know, it's impossible to decipher.
Just like she suspected from the moment she was born, the world is always trying to just give the prize to Kendall by default. So if she ever wanted a chance at winning and earning her father's approval, she would have to carve her own path in politics. This would make her stand out, as it would validate that she's the only sibling that can succeed outside this nepotistic empire. And if she can play for the other political team, then her father will feel the impact of her success more than anyone else. As the more she becomes a thorn in his side, the more he's incentivized to take her in and elevate her above her otherwise predetermined stature. This conflicting set of goals requires Shiv to not be particularly loyal to either side, as she has to be ready and willing to abandon or betray either of them at a moment's notice if a better offer comes along, especially one that allows her to cut the line ahead of her older brothers. But having a disloyal mindset is also a protective measure. It provides her a ready-made excuse for why she can't have what she wants, as she can always claim she was never that invested in the first place. This attitude bleeds directly into her romantic relationships too, where Shiv also always keeps her options open, scared to put all her eggs in one basket, as real monogamy requires absolute trust. Something she's never learned to give anyone else, as she's never seen an example of it play out in real life that didn't later backfire. As over a long enough timeline, anyone that's loyal to her father ends up getting burned. Logan isn't faithful to anyone, not in business, not interpersonally, not in romance. Shiv has seen the countless women come and go from her father's life. The cycle is always the same. He develops a newfound enthusiasm for them that they think makes them special, and before you know it, they're forgotten or sent packing. So it's natural that Shiv's greatest fear is that this could happen to her, that she could allow herself to get hurt, used, or emotionally abused by any man other than the one that started this cycle of trauma in the first place. So Shiv uses offense as her greatest form of defense, and cheats before getting cheated on. Just like the line Ewan quotes that ultimately sums up the theme of the show, life is nothing but a competition to be the criminal, rather than the victim.
You're marrying a man fathoms beneath you because you don't want to risk being betrayed.
Despite clearly being attracted to more conflict-seeking men that go tit for tat with her, she chooses to marry Tom, someone completely subservient. As not only does this allow her to feel in complete control, a feeling she lacked growing up as the youngest, it also protects her from the possibility of ever being truly hurt or betrayed. Shiv is ultimately an avoidant who doesn't know what real love is, as her entire family mixes it together with power, leverage, and personal interests. From her perspective, love is a weakness that can be used against you, as every time she's loved or trusted her own father, he's betrayed her. We see evidence of this when she reveals the harsh words that she associates with love.
Fear and jealousy and revenge.
The central conflict of their relationship is that Tom's needs and desires are somewhat incompatible with Shiv's, as deep down he just wants a traditional wife to support his career and have his children, which she could never do unless she sacrificed her ambitions, put all her eggs in his basket, and took herself out of the game completely. But having grown up in a house of men, Shiv has too much to prove to simply exist in Tom's shadow. She didn't choose him because he's ambitious, she chose him because unlike the type of man Logan thinks she should be with, Tom does what he's told, and due to the fact he has no real leverage, she can always look down on him from a safe distance like her little pet.
Yeah, my meat puppet has stopped working.
Shiv.
So in order to keep herself emotionally safe and her ambitions on track, on their wedding night, the one day they should be at their most committed to one another, Shiv forces Tom into an open marriage. This makes Tom feel expendable to her, just like a toy she could get bored of playing with any day now. She expects loyalty from him while never providing any in return, never factoring him into future plans, never giving him any real assurances, never letting him feel like he's safe. Because that's how she's used to being treated, as just another pawn in Logan's game. She knows no other way. It's only when Tom threatens to break up, because he's unhappy when he's with her, that she becomes emotionally vulnerable enough to fight for him. As the very idea of him abandoning her triggers the exact fear she's been running from her whole life. Not being worthy, not being enough, not being in control. But even this, as her greatest act of loyalty, still ended up strategically working in her favor, as by pleading with Logan to save Tom, it ends up throwing her greatest rival Kendall under the bus in his place. You could wonder what would happen if the alternative plan was for Logan to go to jail and Kendall to take over the company. Would she still protect Tom over her father, over her own career ambitions? Unlike Roman and Connor, Kendall and Shiv were always willing to challenge their father, and even betray him to prove they deserve the top spot. Both siblings convince themselves they're good people, not because of what they do or how they do it, but because of what they say they'll do or could do if they were in charge. Kendall hides his lust for power behind a moral crusade, while Shiv hides behind her political posturing. So it was inevitable these two would clash in Season 4, as they both want it more than anyone else. From Shiv's perspective, she was betrayed first. They were meant to be united as a family, but when push came to shove, Kendall and Roman cut her out of the executive position, as she has no experience and 2 is company, 3's a crowd. This triggers the exact outcome she's always feared. The 2 older boys get preference due to their age and gender, making her completely powerless unless she does something to stop them. And because she's the only one with real experience working outside the family, she naturally leans towards that strength. It makes strategic sense. If the company is going to be sold to Madsson, then he becomes the only person worth impressing anymore, the ultimate father figure that has the power to decide who wins. So Shiv transfers her loyalty over to him, as he's making her feel valued and promises her a top position, whereas her own brothers are increasingly cutting her out of key decisions without even realizing it. So in classic Shiv style, she uses offense as defense. She protects and prioritizes herself above everyone else, as that's what she sees everyone around her doing anyway, even if they don't acknowledge it.
Frankly, I want what's best for me. You need to think about what's best for you, huh?
She always has to keep her options open, because as the youngest sibling, those were the only cards she was dealt. So now she's simultaneously pretending she wants to crash the deal so she's still in with her brothers, while secretly working with Madsson to ensure the deal goes through. Faking phone calls, tugging on heartstrings, doing whatever it takes to undermine her family. Until, inevitably, all of her lies catch up with her, and she's exposed before her strategy pays off, leaving her with no moral leg to stand on, except for her political assertions, which fall on deaf ears as she's revealed herself to be just as corrupt. The Roy children were bred to compete and do whatever it takes to win, but by working in the same company all these years, Kendall and Roman have been trained to work together towards a common cause, whereas Shiv's external work experience has only ever taught her to spite the family for her own long-term gain. And although these habits were all formed as a strategy to protect herself and help her to compete from a handicapped position, all it does is further isolate her, as by never being loyal to anyone in her life, she makes all of her relationships fleeting and transactional, playing one option against the other until eventually they all run out. Well, if you've made it this far, firstly, thank you for watching, but if you could now give the video a like, possibly even leave a comment and click on that subscribe button, it will encourage that mysterious algorithm to do its thing. And if you want to support the channel personally, you can check out my Patreon.